It is 7:34, and I'm going to call to order the public hearing on the 25-26 general fund budget. Ms. Tucker?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. All right. So today is our public hearing and third and final reading for our general fund budget. All right. So for our FY 25-26 budget calendar, we started this process back in March of 2025 with our budget board workshops where the board identified its budget priorities. We have worked through 3 iterations of our budget discussion, and today we are here for our third and final budget reading. Some updates on the legislative process, some of the things that happened this year, Proviso 1.3. This is some of the... It sounds very echoey, sorry. Proviso 1.3 adjusted the add-on weighting for virtual charter schools. This was something that was changed during the budget process, but something that will be looked at as we move forward into next budget year. Proviso 108.6 was the PIVA State Health Plan employer premium increase starting in the 2026 plan year. Some bills of note, H3196 Educator Assistance Act. This bill modifies teacher certification requirements for a lifetime teaching certificate. S78, credit for work experience for teachers. This is something that we will actually look as this goes through goes into effect this year, but will be effective for the next budget year. So teachers will get their additional work credit this year through the Department of Education, and then we will see that go into effect in our budget for next year. Our 135th day average membership for K-12, you can see that those numbers there from FY22 through 25, and our weighted pupil units for the same time period. Just some of the things that we looked at as far as state level, minimum salary increases for bachelor year 0, the same in the House and the Senate version to $49,000. Funding for state aid to classroom, employer health insurance were all the same in the House and Senate versions, and bus driver salary increased to 2%. So budget considerations at the district level, we looked at raising the minimum teacher salary schedule bachelor's year 0 from $47,500 to $50,992. We looked at 2 different options to raise $1,500 per cell or $1,000 per cell to raise our teacher salary. This also looked at removing the bachelor's plus 18 pay scale lane, which is something the State Department of Education is doing. And this was the highest priority in all of our stakeholder meetings for our budget. So this was our number 1 priority as we moved into our budget discussions. Other budget considerations at the district level, total requested positions was $2.5 million this year. Obviously, that's something that we were not able to fund all of those positions, but some of the ones that did make it into the budget, we had originally taken out the clinical counselors, and after discussion with the board, the 6 clinical counselors were included in the 25-26 budget request. This will make them permanent general funded FTEs. If you remember, these were ESSER positions that were 1/4 of the fiscal year last year funded with ESSER funds, and 3/4 of the fiscal year last year funded with general funds. And then we moved the cost of the NARI program to fund balance for next year, so a savings of just under $900,000. Some additional increases this year, we had to add in SLED checks. That's something that we will have to pay for next year. Magic School AI, and then other instructional technologies that have been previously funded by the state for a total of $400,000 added. And then potential salary and benefit increases. That the teacher salary raise of $1,000 per cell is just under $8 million. Support staff 2% increase plus adding year 23 to the salary schedule is just under $6 million, and the bus driver 2% increase is $386,000. So for a total of $13.9 million in salary and benefits. Additional salary considerations, these are some additional positions for this year. 2 APIs and to change the intermediate schools to middle schools. So this is just how those models look at the administration structure in the schools. So since we have 2 intermediate schools that will be moving to traditional middle schools, even though this doesn't take place next year, these need to be in place as to help those schools work through the transition, scheduling changes, planning for that next year. So it's imperative that they be in this year's budgets to help those 2 schools make those transitions for the 26-27 school year. Increase in contract days for behavioral specialists, which is a small increase. 2 p.m. maintenance custodial teams. These are for a total of 6 positions, so 2 teams of 3 positions each. These are essentially additional custodial teams that will help our custodial staff work on maintaining our schools, maintaining our facilities, doing some of those paintings and additional cleanings, but also be there in the instance of any emergencies, whether it be flooding or anything that might need to be taken care of. 2 positions in HR, an onboarding and offboarding coordinator for 1 certified and 1 classified. We also added in ESS substitute pay increases. We looked at this across all school districts around us and landed on a $186,000 increase. And then D-team supplements for our 13 elementary athletic leads and our 5 middle athletic leads, as well as some additional band supplements for a total of $1.1 million. So how does that break down for all of our additions? If you add up all of the things that we're doing, you can see our budget really only goes up $10 million from $240 to $250 for next year. But if you add in all the things that we have added to the budget, that's $15 million. So we were able to find savings, we were able to find some efficiencies, we were able to look at truly what do we have this year that we won't have next year as far as costs and things like that, to truly look at how can we do all of the things we want to do within the constraints that we have. And so for looking at just the salaries and benefits, 51% of our salary and benefit increase for next year is the new teacher salary schedule. So that's over half of our increase for next year. Support staff, 2%. So a lot of these are in the classroom support staff. These are not our certified teachers, but any support staff. So that's almost 40% of our increase. And then you can see those other positions, the 2 coordinators in HR are 2%, 2 PM maintenance custodian teams are 3.3%, the 2 APIs are 2%, and the bus driver increase is another 2%. So the majority of our salary and benefit requests for next budget year, 51% plus the 38% is the majority of our salary and benefits requests for next year. So our fund balance assignments, we asked for an additional assignment of $3 million for $1,000 per permanent employee during American Education Week for next year. We asked to move the NARI payments into our fund balance assignment, approximately $400,000 set aside for NARI payments for next year. $3.5 million set aside for capital and equipment expenditures, operational equipment, maintenance and upgrades, school buses, anything in operations, and then 6 FTEs for critical needs that would require board approval if we were to use that. So looking at our fund balance for next year, where we are where we ended last fiscal year, 6/30/2024, where we project to be at the end of this year, we just had a change in our fund balance policy that looks now at a range of 17 to 20%. And so there are ranges based on our FY 2025 budgeted expenditures of $240 million and where we would be at our proposed budget of $250 million for next year with our percent of unassigned fund balance. All right, so how do we get there? Local revenues, you can see our local revenue, it makes up about 37%, 38% of our projected budget for next year. Our state revenues is 62%. Those are slightly shifted from last year. So our local revenue is increasing because our state revenue is decreasing. How does our budget break down for next year? Salaries and fringe, the increase is $9.8 million. Our budget as approved this year to our preliminary budget for next year. Our contractual and services and other operating is an increase of $800,000. Supplies and materials, we were able to take some savings there. And then equipment, you can see that. So overall, salaries and fringe of our total budget for next year is just under 88%, with supplies, services, and equipment is 12%, which is in line with what our budget has been for the last year. State fund estimates for next year. Again, you can see our state aid to classroom. This is something that has been a big discussion at the State House this year, the different weights and how these weights are allocated to all the different public school districts across the state. I think this is something that we will continue discussing as we move into next year's budget as well. How state level appropriations work. So we look at the overall students across the state divided by the state student teacher ratio that the state sets, 11.2. Then you look at kind of a midpoint of salaries. The state looks at a master's plus 12 years experience, so an average salary of $77,000 to get the statewide allocation. So that's how the state comes up with their total appropriation for all the state. And so then how does that break down for us? So we have an allocation of $700,000 to retiree insurance, $1.9 to state aid to classroom based on our 45-day count, $720,000 for EIA, and then some $600,000 for health insurance, and $385,000 for state workers. So this is based on the original House projections, not House 2. which would have given us an additional about $300,000. This is a conservative estimate. This budget was based on really being very lean. Essentially, there is not a lot of margin in this budget, so we were trying to take a very conservative estimate as far as what money we're going to get. This is truly the max of what we'll see from the state. These are based on our enrollment numbers from this year, and so this will change based on 10 days in next year, so those counts. So we kind of know that the highest number, and we're again, just being conservative on our state estimates.
Ms. Tucker, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Back on the last slide, just, so I know that bus drivers get salary increases as state workers, but that doesn't apply to, like, staff in those offices. So, what kind of scale are they on, and when do we look at raises for that personnel?
So those personnel would fall under our support staff, and so they would get the 2% from our support staff raises.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Are they also on a step?
They would get a step, and
So they would get a step
based on their
plus
years.
2%. What is the average step increase?
The average step is about 1%. So depending on whether it's teacher scale or support scale, but they typically see, so if the teachers get a 2%, or the support staff gets a 2%, they might get another 1% or 0.5%, so about.
Yeah, I know we talked in the past about the increase in health benefit costs. In the second year, next year, teachers will be carrying that weight, or?
So
Right now, I know at one time we talked about the teachers because we're looking at the increase in pay and how much they would have to take off of that for that. What will that look like? I mean, this coming year, obviously it's employer-based. We have to pick that up as a district. Is that how it will continue, or will they be asked to pick that up?
So in the past, it has kind of fluctuated from what the state has put on the employees versus the employers. There will be an increase, and it takes effect in the 2026 year, so starting in January of next year, employees will see a slight increase, but the increase on the teacher salary scale will offset that, so they will not as much, but I will say that I want to say it was a couple $100 what the average benefit would be. The average cost increase would be on the health insurance side, but won't take effect till January of next year. So, any other questions? Again, state aid to classroom, this is just how the state looks at dividing this out. So the state looks at weighted pupil units, and this is kind of how this formula is really complicated looking at this from the state perspective, because we don't see the statewide weighted pupil units. So we are missing a piece of the formula when we're trying to figure out what our part of that pie looks like. So the state looks at the total weighted pupil units for each district based on the proviso funding, determines your state proportion based on your WPUs per district. Then there's the index of tax paying ability based on what your district can pay and its ability to raise your local taxes. That factors into your ability to raise your local piece. Hold harmless, and then the rest of the state funding is split across all remaining districts. So how does that impact our local revenue? So we have our operations millage and our debt service millage. Our operations millage, all of our 4% or our primary residence is exempt based on Act 388. So our operations millage only affects our 6% properties, so rental properties, businesses. This is what provides FTEs to the district. Our debt service millage is on your 4% property, so it is on your primary home. It provides for construction. It provides for all of our construction and renovations, also on our 6% properties. So what does a Lexington County tax bill look like? So this portion of your tax bill on your primary residence looks like the school gets 72% of that, but that's not true if this is your primary residence. So the school was really getting a much smaller portion of that. This would be true for vehicles and for rental properties, but not for your primary residence, because in that small line up there it says not including any applicable exemptions or credits. So for this year, for our 25-26 proposed calculations, the total value of a mill, total estimated assessed value on non-owner occupied properties, $366 million. We did an estimated collection rate, which has increased from last year. Last year it was budgeted at 95%. This year we increased that to 97%, looking back historically over the past 10 years of what Lexington and Richland County has collected. So our adjusted estimated assessed value is $355 million for an estimated value of a mill is $355,629. So using that value of a mill, our projected local revenue would be $84.7 million. Calculating our rollback this year, because Lexington County is going through its reassessment this year, Richland County went through last year. Because we are a school district that is split between two counties, we wait till the second county in our district has gone through a reassessment before we do our rollback calculation. We are unique in that perspective. So we do the operating millage increase looks at consumer price index, which is set by the state, 2.95%. Our population growth, which is given to us by Revenue and Fiscal Affairs, was 2.4%. So our allowable percentage increase this year is 4.99%. So that basically means that we do our rollback calculation, and then this is what our allowable increase is to essentially kind of hold us at the same level we were for last year. So our 24-25 operating millage was 266 mills. Our rollback millage is 243.2 mills. And our millage cap this year would be 12.1. So that's how much we are allowed to go up this year based on the millage cap. We also have allowable previously not used look-back millage. So over the last 3 years, we could have increased our millage by 39.7 mills for a total allowable increase of 51.8. So those are last 3 years. Again, you can see the collection rate for the last 2 years prior to 25-26. Use the 95% collection rate. So just taking into account that change in collection rate percentage for this year. So the district's administration's recommendation is looking at where do we need to be based on what the revenue we're going to get from the state and the priorities that has been set by looking at the priorities of the board. We looked at needing an additional revenue of $8 million. So that actually allows us to take our millage from 266 to 261. We would use 5.7 of the look-back mills, using the value of a mill at 355, for a total projected revenue of $92.8 million. And so our administration's recommendation, it recommends the third and final reading approval of the FY 25-26 general fund budget in the amount of $250,580,020, with the operating millage rate reduced to 261, and the approval of fund balance assignment totaling $7,455,197, comprised of the following: employee retention incentive of $3 million, NARI payments of $400,000, capital equipment and expenditures of $3.5 million, and $555,000 for 6 FTEs for critical needs. I'll stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Tucker, Ms. Huddle?
I have 2 questions. If you can go back to the slide, and I know it's pretty early, but the one with the pie chart of, not that one, the one with the.
Salary and benefits increases?
Yeah.
This one.
So the blue side, the new teacher salary schedule, that's the increase, correct? And that includes the amount we have to increase it because the state increased step and the $1,000.
So those are the same. Those would be one and the same. So we would have to go up to the state's minimum, which the state's minimum would be the $1,000 or $1,500 up to the state's minimum. And so we did $1,000 per cell, but we also we got rid of the bachelor's plus 18 lane. So our bachelor's lane really increased more because we were moving them over to that bachelor's plus 18 lane. So this isn't, they're not
I understand.
too different.
So related question. So, and I realize all the cells are different, but if you just look at the bachelor's and 0, how much were we paying above the bachelor's 0 are we this year?
Are we this year? So this year, our bachelor's 0 is $47,500 plus the $2,500 NARI. And so we were essentially, with our NARI payments, we were
$2,500 above?
$2,500 above.
Okay.
So,
And we're phasing out NARI.
and we're phasing out, we would like to essentially phase out NARI. We have that in the budget for next year. But as we're moving that bachelor 0 up, we're seeing less teachers come in with that because they're getting the experience.
Okay. The other question I had is, so the projection is that we will have 7.4 million, a little bit more, left over after the end of this fiscal year. And I know you weren't here, but prior years we've had many millions left over. I think it's every year since I've been on the board, we've had millions left over. why? And why will this coming year be different?
So I do think that looking at I think the calculation of the value of a mill at 97% versus 95% will make a difference. When I really dug into looking at the revenue collected of Lexington and Richland counties over the last 10 years and trying to look at some changes and some trends, there was one year, I want to say it was 2 to 3 years ago, where the tax projections were so much higher than what was anticipated, and trying to look at trends and why that was, because it had been very historically kind of growing by just a small amount, and 2 to 3 years ago, it jumped exponentially. And so I think increasing that collection rate to 97% in the current year will make a difference. We do typically see even higher than 97%, but you see that over a 3-year period as houses go into foreclosure and then sell and the taxes are paid. So I think that will help reduce that fund balance and keep it in that 17 to 20% range. I think that's going to be a big part of it. I do think that changes at the state, when we start looking at what are they going to do with boating taxes and some other changes, I think we may see that the taxes fluctuate again. So just trying to keep abreast of what changes and how that's going to impact, because just the tax on the watercraft could have a huge impact to us if that passes next year, because that's not something that we see just in January. We see those taxes come in on the operating and the debt service every month for a couple $100,000. So that would greatly impact our cash flow. And so I think having that strong fund balance, knowing the uncertainty that we know, but I do think changing the collection rate to 97% will make a difference on seeing those funds reduced.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'll get to the end of this.
At this time, we'll turn it over to public participation. Ms. Taylor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dina Marlowe is here to speak about raising taxes on Richland County residents.
Yeah, I wanted to come here and to the board, although I feel like it's almost a mute subject. Y'all do whatever you want to do, and that's how I feel about the board. That's how it is. My taxes went up last year, so I don't know where she got her information from, Ms. Heather, because Richland County taxes went up almost $250. Y'all want to raise the taxes again? Richland County's going to raise the taxes. Not everyone has the money to pay for all of these taxes that y'all are trying to get and due to the Richland County residents. And a lot of you don't live in Richland County, so it's not going to affect you. So that's pretty crappy of y'all. I'm sorry, but it is, to do that to someone that you don't even live in that residence, that county. So Lexington County's not raising their millage, but y'all want to raise the millage because, I'm sorry, but the things that Ms. Heather came up here and said was, I found a lot of false statements in. So, and not everyone gets a raise every year, okay? I never get a raise. We're pretty much topped out. I'm in the medical field. We don't get raises, pretty much. When we come in, that's it. That's how it is. So y'all want us to pay for people to get raises and have health insurance when I don't even have health insurance. I have no health insurance. Pretty much lived all my life without it. Can't afford it. Because what you want to charge me for health insurance based on my salary when I don't go to the doctor or do anything, but you want to raise all of my taxes. And I don't understand how you can do that to the residents of Richland County when and this tax bill is going to be on our taxes for 20 years. That's extreme. I don't understand how y'all can vote on that without listening to, on one bill, like one meeting. That's it. I don't understand this. I don't get what you're doing, how it's legal. I don't understand any of how the board works. I don't like the board. The board is, to me, corrupt. Every one of you, sorry, but I'm not being ugly. I'm being honest. I think it is corrupt, and it's very corrupt for Richland County. And I can't speak for Lexington County. I don't live in Lexington County, so can't speak on that subject. But everything I've heard here tonight with that little budget that she went through is that's crazy. The teachers, do they deserve a raise? Yeah, they deserve a raise to some degree, yes. But for our taxes to go up like that, for everyone else to suffer for them, no, I'm sorry, no, it doesn't. No, that doesn't. That's not the betterment of the whole of the people of everything. Sorry, but it's not. So my taxes in my car, I paid them this year. They keep going up. It's 3 years old. Keep going up. I thought they went down every year. No, guess not. So, $400-something of my taxes were my car was for the school. I don't even have children go to school. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but that is, what you're doing is wrong, and I'm gonna try to do everything I can to fight y'all on every aspect of it, in any way. I don't know, see, it seems like we need Doge in here, because a lot of frivolous spending in this budget that we have. So, I'm gonna do everything I can to fight every one of y'all, even if you pass it, and just want you to know that.
We will now adjourn from the public hearing on the general fund budget.